Hello. So I'm here to do a mid-month check-in, and um, I've got some cat and dog videos. And do I have any regular life videos? Probably not. I don't tend to really record a whole lot of my life. Like, we've been going out, we've been doing things, we've been going on dates, we've been having a good time, but I don't tend to capture it. I want to like really be in it and enjoy it. I know. But at the end of this video, I will insert some pet videos. I have been experiencing a lot of happiness and joy lately. I've been having a lot of joy with the rose bush in our yard. It was here when we got here. I'm very thankful to whoever put it out there. It's this big rose bush that just gets a bunch of roses on it. And I decided to start bringing some inside and enjoying them. So you can look at pictures of these while I'm talking about it. I love them. They're so pretty. The fragrant rose scent is so strong on these flowers. I don't know what they're doing. I've never had roses that smelled this strong, but I love it. I told Brad, I think I want to have flowers in the kitchen all the time now because I got so used to having these roses here and they're just so pretty. So we might have to do that. But I heard that Sprouts, I think, has flowers that are reasonably priced but really pretty. Let me know if you have any thoughts on where to get these flowers at. And I got this candle. It's a soy candle, and it looks like a bowl of cereal. And it smells like cereal too. But they also, I think they have one or two that look like a bowl of fruit. And I love this candle. And I've burned it a few times now, and it smells good, but it's not overpowering. But it's not burning a lot every time I burn it. So it's not one of those things where you buy a candle and you go to burn it and find out you can only burn it 1 or 2 different days and then it's all the way gone. It's not like that. But just looking at it brings me a lot of joy. And then I got this mug. I have been looking at this mug for the longest time. And I saw that it was on sale. So I decided to go ahead and get it. It was like $6 or something. And I'm really excited to finally have another Golden Girls mug because I only have one. I swear I must have more in storage. Also, I redid my library. I put these bookshelf thingies on the walls. So the books actually go further up the wall. I wanted it to feel more like an actual library in there instead of the bookshelf that we have that's, I think, 5 feet tall. And then the one next to it's also about 5 feet tall. But the rest of the wall, there's no books. I thought, well, I want it to feel like a library where there's books going all the way up the wall. So I did put these shelves up. But I also completely emptied out my bookshelves. So I cleaned the bookshelves and then I reorganized them. And I organized them in a way that I think is going to be so much better for me as a mood reader. On to the books, though, because that's why you're here, right? The first book that I read this month was On Borrowed Time by Jenn McKinlay. This is the 5th book in the Library Lovers Mystery series. And this one was kind of a different book. The protagonist, Lindsay, has a brother named Jack. Was his name Jack? Yes, his name is Jack. He comes to town and a bunch of drama and mystery starts happening. But it's not like a typical mystery where we have different people that we might think did it and all that. No. In this book, we don't know until the very end who did what and why. And so it was just a adventure that we were on together. We really enjoyed it, but it just wasn't a typical mystery where we could say, I think because of the clues, this person did it. No, there was none of that. It was more, what happened? Who did it happen to? Why did it happen? Who did it? We had no idea. but it was a fun read. Then I listened to The Exiles by Christina Baker Kline. In this book, we have two protagonists. We have Evangeline, who is a governess in England who is wrongly accused of theft and attempted murder. And she gets locked up, and back then they would take a lot of their criminals, they would put them on these ships and they would send them over to Australia. And it's not the way I pictured such a experience to be. It was a lot more unsanitary, and the ship ride took 4 months. And this is a historical fiction, so it's always kind of interesting to learn about something totally new. I had no idea the story of what would happen to the female criminals that were sent over to Australia, and I didn't even know why they were sent there or anything. I definitely recommend the book if you're at all interested in the subject. The other main character is Mathena. Mathena is an Aborigine girl who is the daughter of a tribal chief, and this governor and his wife, they just think she's cute. So they decide that they're going to bring her in as, you know, their cute little pet that they can play with. So she goes to live with them because her parents have been killed. And just the way that people were treated like they weren't human. Both of those women in the book are treated like they're not human. I'm assuming it's historically accurate. And it's just so disturbing. Just how much throughout history people have been treated like they're not humans. I thought that this book was so engrossing. I loved reading it. I felt like I was there with the characters. There were some twists that I found very shocking, and I loved the historical aspect of the book. I gave it 4 stars, and the reason I didn't give it 5 was there was something that felt like it was missing, and I can't even put my finger on what it was. But there was something not there. But I loved it. I don't know. Then I read Love Pamela by Pamela Anderson. Wow. I was not expecting what I fell into with this book. I thought it would be a lot of really wild, raunchy times and a lot of stories about being drunk or on drugs and, you know, crazy things done on tour buses and that kind of stuff. But, you know, it really wasn't like that for the most part. There were a few stories where it was like, oh, okay, what'd you do? But this book really goes into the ingredients of, what makes up Pam as a person? Who is Pam? And she wrote it herself. She also did her own reading of the book for the audiobook. I actually listened to the book. I do not have a physical copy of it. But her reading of the book, I don't know, it was the best I've heard, but it was nice hearing it in her voice. The book goes pretty deeply into her childhood and into her life before she was famous and into explaining how she got famous and a little bit about the early fame days. She does not go very deep into her love life. And I had looked at some of the reviews afterwards. I'm always curious if people don't agree with me about a book, why? And the big thing about people that did not like this book was they wanted more of a scoop. They felt like you could learn just as much of the scoop about her life by watching that documentary kind of show that just came out about her on Netflix. I can't remember what it was called. But I personally wasn't really there for the scoop. I wanted to know who she was. I feel like I already know the scoop from watching that kind of show. What else is she going to tell me? I mean, I guess you could get really in depth, but you have to consider people's privacy too. She doesn't want to get sued by any of these men from her past. She went through abuse. She has gone through some really harsh and tough things in her life, but I love what I read about who she is. first things first, Pam is a book nerd. What? A book nerd? Like, hello, she's one of us, right? She loves reading, and she loves reading a lot of books that stereotypically you would not expect her to be reading. She reads books that are hard to read and hard to understand, and she loves art and art museums and art galleries, and she's very sensitive and she's very sensual, and she loves nature and animals. She loves walking around barefoot, and I just found her to be an amazing person. But if you're interested in who she is, as far as what the inside scoop of her life is, watch the documentary. But if you want to know who she is, read the book. I thought it was so good. And it was so poetic the way that she wrote it. I even learned something from this book, which I'm not saying that, I'm a Mensa member or anything. But what I am saying is I don't typically learn a lot from the books that I read. And what I learned from this, and I'm trying to keep it with me, is that it's important to remember to play, to have fun, to go outside, to be kind of like a kid again, Go ahead and run around and act silly if you want to. We only have this life to live. And I feel like I'm too reserved sometimes, And I found it so inspiring. Since reading this book, 2 weekends in a row now, Brad and I have taken Olive to the dog park and done some running around and playing, and I just want to feel more with nature. But I really liked her, and I really liked the book. I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I want to get a physical copy because I do tend to read memoirs over and over again if I really like them. Oh, and I loved what she had to say about being a mom. She sounds like such a good mom, and she sounds like, I don't know, my kind of mom, where she's not like a helicopter mom. She's a really good mom. She's very thoughtful about how she raised her sons, but she's gives them a chance to be who they are and to be independent. And I just love her, you guys. I do. The next book that I read was The Butcher by Jennifer Hillier. Now, this was my first Jennifer Hillier book, and I wasn't sure what to expect. Let me know if you have read Jennifer Hillier, and if you have, if you like her, and if you do, what books you recommend. Okay. This book is about a guy named Sam. Sam, he has recently, I think it was a year or two before, opened up his own restaurant, and his career is taking off. He's about to do a reality cooking show and that kind of stuff, and his grandpa tells him that he's ready to not take care of himself anymore, in the sense that he doesn't want to live in this, I think it was a Victorian home in the Seattle area anymore. He wants to go live in a retirement condo kind of situation, and he's giving him his house. And so Matt's excited. He moves into this house, and he finds this locked crate, and he opens it, and he finds something that no one would expect to find, and it opens up quite a plethora of questions and drama for him, and it changes his life in a way that can't be undone. And Matt has a girlfriend named Sam, whose mother was killed by a serial killer, and she's trying to figure out, they say who the serial killer was, but she doesn't think that's who it was. So she's writing a book about all this, and it's all intertwined together. And I don't want to say anything else because I don't want to give anything away, but there was some twists in this book. It was shocking at times. It was twisted and fast-paced, and it was a psychological thriller, but also some family drama was in there. It was very hard to stop listening to. I loved listening to a book that took place in the greater Seattle area. That's where I grew up, and it's always fun to go back there in books, at least. There was multiple protagonists. Sam, Matt, and Matt's grandfather were all protagonists in that book, and it kind of had current time and flashbacks, and sometimes it got a little bit confusing where we were with the story, especially listening to it. So because I kept getting so confused and I didn't feel like certain things were clear even when I was done reading it, I decided to give it 4 stars. But I thought it was a really good book, and I do plan on reading more of her books now. And then the next 4 books that I'm going to talk to you about are part of my horror mayhem reading. The first one that I wanted to read was Jawbone by Monica Ojeda, and she is from Ecuador. This book was translated to English, and it's a horror novel, and I can't tell you what it's about because I was unable to figure out what it was about. It was very confusing. I couldn't even figure out how many protagonists there were. It was just a very bizarre book. I felt like there was so much information from the past. I don't know. It was about a teacher and a student. And a student was in a cabin against her will with the teacher. So I'm assuming the teacher kidnapped her. But it kept going into the past, like so much into the past, to the point where I was tired of reading about the past because it didn't appear to have any point to all the information we were being given about the past as opposed to what is going on in this cabin right now. I could see if some of it was somewhat related, but it didn't feel like it was. The narrators were so unreliable that it got to the point where it was too much. Like I said, I couldn't even figure out how many narrators there were. Maybe if I was physically reading it and not listening, but it just got to where it was like, wait, who is this? I kept having to rewind it and try to figure out, okay, who's that though? Did they mention her before? I don't remember this person. It just got really bizarre and very inappropriate, to the point where I was so offended I couldn't read anymore. Which, if you know me, I don't get easily offended, but I was. So I decided to stop reading it at 37%. If you hear all that barking, that's Olive being difficult in the backyard. Okay, so then I read Christopher Pike, Bury Me Deep. This one is about a girl named Jean who is on is it spring break? We'll just say spring break. I'm not sure, but she's on a vacation with some friends from high school to Hawaii. And she's so excited. She goes a little bit late because she has to stay longer to do her finals before she leaves, or redo a final or something. She meets this guy on the plane, and he dies, and she starts having nightmares and visions about this, and he keeps coming back, and she's trying to figure out why he's, I guess you would say, haunting her. And so it takes place in Hawaii. There's all kinds of like diving and scuba talk and references and stuff like that. I found the book to be very suspend your disbelief. And to be honest, I'm really not a fan of like reading about boating or scuba diving or that kind of stuff. It's just not my thing. And it just felt like so much of the book was about scuba diving and like, do you have this in, and did you check this meter thing? And it's just not me. I don't know if we can control what kind of prompts bore us to death, but that for me, this was one of them. And I understand that there had to be a lot of diving talk because of the storyline of the book, but it just wasn't my thing. So I gave it 2 stars. Not because of the diving talk, but just how wild, how hard it was to believe everything happening. The next horror mayhem book that I read was called Waiting by R.L. Stine. This one is about a girl named Karen who starts getting these calls, and they're threatening, and I don't want to say much else in case you plan on reading it, but I will say this was probably my least favorite R.L. Stine book. It was just so predictable, and it was so overly melodramatic. The characters in this book all seemed very mentally unstable in a way that I don't know that I've ever seen a group of friends all be, at a high school or just anywhere. I, it just didn't ring right for me. It just was just kind of a constant eye rolling, oh, come on situation for me. I don't know that the behavior in the book is the kind of behavior that I don't feel people do ever. But I did read it in one day, and I gave this one 2 stars also. Just not really my thing. And then the last book I have done for Horror Mayhem so far is Mr. Cables by Ronald Malfi. This was a book that I listened to on SCRIBD. It's 99 pages, so I think the audio version is just over 2 hours. It was a nice short story. In this book, the main character is an author, and he's doing a book signing. And this woman comes up, and she asks him to sign a book that he wrote. And he looks at it, and he says, "This isn't my book." And she says, "Well, it's got your name on it." He says, I don't have any books with this cover. He starts looking in it. It's not a book that he wrote. And she tells him, "Oh, are you sure it's got your name on it? And I have to tell you, I've read all of your books, and this one is the scariest one by far." She tells him to go ahead and keep it because she found it so scary she doesn't plan on reading it again. So he reads it. Some weird things start happening. He starts finding out what's going on. And that's all I want to say because I don't want to spoil it, but I do recommend this one. I thought it was a good book for people that like horror, but maybe not horror, if you know what I mean. It was not bloody or gory or violent or anything like that. It was horror because the idea of what was actually happening is kind of creepy and kind of haunting. So if you like light horror like that, where there's not a lot of blood and guts and violence and killing and stuff like that, this might really be the one for you. I did enjoy it. I give this one 4 stars. And that is it for the books I have finished. Not read, but finished so far this month. If you've read any of these books or you want to read any of these books, be sure to let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Happy reading.